Hey, Sean, I found a race that's simply outstanding in its field.
Today we're going over the Scarecrow race. Welcome everyone, I'm Sean, this is Tony, and today we're going to be going over the Homebrew race, the Scarecrow. We went through a couple different races on D&D Beyond and DMSGUILD, but this one really fits the bill when it comes to character and balance.
Yeah, this one is by Walrock Homebrew, which we now have the pronunciation right of that.
Yeah.
Very close to Warlock, though, so don't blame us anything on that. But this one's a really awesome one. You can find it in the DM's Guild. We'll put a link in the description below. But without further ado, we want to get into it.
Yes, and this one's interesting because it goes into this idea that you are this spirit that's been trapped in this amalgamation of straw and hay, and essentially you're there to serve a purpose. You're there to serve whatever it is you've been created to do.
Yeah, maybe a hag created you, maybe somebody trying to bring back their parents or something did it, and all they had was this husk, so to speak.
Yes.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Too many puns.
Or simply you can have been created just to kind of literally do what a scarecrow does, is, keep the crop safe and things like that. But that goes a lot into your character, and it goes into detail on the first part of the PDF as to how you can create where you came from, why you recreated, even some names that you can go for. But let's just go ahead and go into the features. So it's +2 to Dex and +1 to Charisma. Makes sense. Which
makes sense. I like that. Charisma has to be in there with the Scarecrow.
Absolutely,
somehow.
Yeah.
How else are you going to terrify those crows, right?
Exactly.
But they get dark vision, alignment. We honestly, we don't really go much into age and alignment and those things.
But it's interesting to note that you don't age. You don't die due to getting old or anything because you're a scarecrow.
So you can essentially live forever.
Like Cher. Yeah, right. Assuming you don't get burned or something.
That's true.
You also get dark vision, pretty standard 60 feet of dark vision. Now, when you go into the last page, that's where you get into like the really big meat and bones of what this class does and what separates it from some of the other scarecrows that we've seen.
There's no meat and bones. It's straw,
or the straw and
wood,
hay of this class, I guess. Yeah.
And maybe some canvas, some burlap. But yes, so you are considered a living construct, which means not only do you have that humanoid trait with it, but you're also considered a construct for purposes of
So this
spells.
can be good or bad because, now that you've covered both of the humanoid and construct, now you can get affected by spells that are like affect constructs. So like if something might take extra damage or something might affect you specifically. So it's something to note because now you're more susceptible to like more spell effects.
The good thing, though, is you don't have to eat, you don't have to breathe, and you are immune to disease with that.
Which is always a good plus.
And nothing too game-breaking with that. We did see a few other ones that were out there that had like some really game-breaking stuff.
Oh my god, you can never be exhausted, never be charmed, never be blah, 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 blah. And I get it, you're a scarecrow, you're a construct. But that doesn't mean that you have to, completely live out, that literal sense of being a construct, of being a scarecrow. And that's why we like this one a lot.
Right. And, there's a reason why those are very popular on D&D Beyond, for example, because they give you everything.
And they're overpowered, yeah.
Yes. But you do have a body of straw.
Yeah, so you are immune to poison damage and the poison condition, but the caveat here is that whenever you take fire damage, and this is very interesting because typically we'd see, you're vulnerable or you're resistant. Here, you take additional damage equal to 5 minus your Constitution modifier, which cannot be reduced or ignored by resistance or immunity.
Right, so every time you're taking that fire damage, what have you, unless you are a fighter with a very high Constitution,
right?
That's not gonna, that's gonna do it. Now, I don't think that if you have somehow you get the +6 on a modifier that you're gaining health by fire.
No, yeah.
But at the same time, I like this because it makes that it is going to hit you. There is no resistance. There's no, what have you.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can't play with it spell-wise, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and the minus with your con modifier is very interesting because it encourages you, like, maybe I should consider that when I'm creating this build.
Right. Now, the next thing on here you get is claws, because what Scarecrow is not good
without... You can't have a Scarecrow without the
claws. Right. Yeah. We've been playing Scarecrows in Curse of Strahd recently. I had my party go up against 6 to 8 of these Scarecrows. And the claws were really nice.
Yeah, and if you decide to play this race, essentially they're 1d4 plus your strength or your dex, so it's actually nice that you get a choice. And they're considered to be melee weapons with a finesse property if you choose to use it as a finesse weapon.
Right. Kind of common when it comes to having an unarmed strike or something like that with it. But this one is,
It's nice to have the choice.
Yes, you have the strength or the dex, so your build can go either way. Now, this next one is Frightened Crows.
And it's actually pretty literal. So any crows or ravens of CR1 or less within 60 feet are automatically frightened of you until they are no longer within the range. Thankfully, if one of your buddies does like a Find Familiar spell, it actually doesn't affect them, so they're free to summon a crow or raven. Now, you were talking about, I mean, cool feature, makes sense with like the race and all that, but you were talking about how you would actually swap this out for something that we saw in a different one.
Right. I was thinking there was one that we saw in D&D Beyond that actually had thaumaturgy as something that you would get, and I kind of like that because you're able to, you know, make your voice boom or lightning to flash and all these things that happen. And it goes into this
thing of like, you know, scaring as a scarecrow.
Right. So, you know, feel free. It's not included in this, but if you want to swap out the frightened crows, because sometimes ain't really no crows around. You know?
Yeah, not real. Maybe not a lot in the dungeon. Yeah, exactly.
You can make it frightened chickens. There's more chickens than crows, but then you'd be a scare chicken, which, you know, doesn't really work. But thaumaturgy is a great one to replace this with if you're looking at, you know, just having a fearful kind of thing, because it doesn't really have an effect on, you know, monsters or anything like that. But the idea of being able to, you know, conjure this frightful image is kind of cool. Yeah. I thought that was a neat little switch. But do you want to take the next one on that?
Yeah, so this one, very fitting, something called Scarecrow's Vigil. So essentially when you sleep, it's kind of similar to the elf thing where they can only sleep for 4 hours, or like the Warforged who kind of remain motionless. Here, you enter an inactive state for 4 hours, and you're completely motionless and all that, but you don't dream. Instead, you're always aware of what's going on. So, you know, you're living out the Scarecrow way of, like, you know, just being there, but you're there.
Do you have to stand like this, though?
That'd be great.
Like,
well,
that's something
and it says that, yeah, and you're standing, too. So, like, you're actually standing while you're taking your long rest for that 8 hours.
It is kind of cool. In fact, I like that. I would actually have my players at the table have to stand like this, just to see, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But it's useful because you're indistinguishable from a normal scarecrow. So depending on where you're at, obviously, if you're a scarecrow in a dungeon, you might not be able to like kind of like blend with everything. But if you're in an open field, or even if you're like on the countryside, you know, kind of just become this thing.
I can just see a couple of orcs just going
like poking at it.
You know, like. You build this thing?
Well, I wasn't there when I got here.
Pretty, though. You know, like,
yeah, exactly.
Just kind of looking at it like that. But I do like that, the vigil thing. Yeah. And the last thing that you get is terrifying glare.
Yeah, this seemed to be a very common thing with pretty much any scarecrow that we ran into. And, you know, it makes sense. This one's pretty standard. So as a bonus action, you can target a creature within 30 feet. Has to make a wisdom save against your proficiency in charisma, +8. And then if they fail, they're frightened of you until the end of your next turn, and you can do that once per short or long rest. So, you know, pretty standard. There makes a lot of sense with the, you know, the scarecrow, you know, kind of thing that you're going with. So it's a nice little feature.
And I like the different class options and stuff that you can end up doing with this. I mean, if a scarecrow wizard is kind of cool. I would, you know, the only thing that's weird about that is if you're casting Burning Hands. Because anything around you that's, you know what I mean? Like, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
Or, you know, but I do like the idea of having a scarecrow that's been animated to protect a town, for example. So you have a scarecrow fighter, which would be kind of neat.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Things like that. You know, I can see a lot of different ways you can go with it. And obviously, during the Halloween time, this is a great one you can just throw out there, have your players play, and have them enjoy themselves. Not everyone has to be a vampire or a werewolf.
Yeah, you can be a scarecrow, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you've got something you'd like to send us, whether it be Halloween themed or not, because we probably won't get to Halloween videos again for another year, definitely go ahead and send it to us right down here at dmbrewcrew@gmail.com. We'd be happy to take a look. Not everything makes the channel, but we do our darndest.
Yes, and if you're willing to support the channel, we obviously have our Patreon down below, so if you want to get some behind the scenes stuff, you're more than welcome to, you know, Patreon to us and like check out what we have. And we have some DMs Guild content as well. We can leave a link down below for the Briarthorn. Oh, is it up there now?
It's going to be up there.
So we'll have a link for the Briarthorn if you want to check that out. It's a homebrew race that's been created by Home Brew Crew, and it does help support the channel if you decide to pick it up.
And there are a few more on their way, aren't there, Sean?
Yes, exactly. So we have the Gradanis, the Crystalline race coming out, as well as the Path of the Mountain Walker Barbarian. So there's a lot of great stuff coming out, so be sure to stay tuned for that as well.
Yes, and remember, the best campaigns are always the ones that are homebrewed. So until next time, keep brewing.